All right, so blessings. So I thought it'd be within my best interest to cover this particular scenery here in this movie called Coming to America. And for those of you that have been consistently watching my content, understand that I do spiritual breakdowns with regards to certain aspects slash certain parts of certain movies. For instance, I've done a whole series of the Lion King movie, and I spoke about the spiritual ramifications of certain characteristics and certain parts of that movie. All right, and how it ties in to certain biblical stories, and I compare it to how the world is being run today and what takes precedence in society as of today. All right, and then as I've spoken about a number of times in that series, that movies are designed to subconsciously and subliminally program the masses at large. Why is that? Because Satan's goal is to have everyone in spiritual bonds. Okay, that way they can establish dominance and rulership over the masses. Okay, they do that by putting things in certain movies and even as far as music and whatever have you, to once again program the masses and make them think how they want them to think. Okay, contrary to the truth, contrary to order. That way there's confusion, there's chaos, and that way Satan maintains his rulership. Okay. And what you gotta understand is, for the so-called black man, Satan is their number one target. Why? Because the so-called black man is who Satan fears the most. Why is that? Because the so-called black man represents power, he represents authority, he represents royalty, he represents leadership, guidance, and protection. Okay, he represents masculinity. And when you read the Bible, the so-called black man is made in the image of the Most High God, Yahweh. Okay, so this is why Satan is desperately trying to rewrite history and make sure the so-called black man doesn't understand his true history and heritage. Okay, they do that by whitewashing and brainwashing people and completely flipping the script and flipping the narrative and steer people away from the truth. Okay, this way the so-called black man is bottom of the totem pole in society, and that way he stays at the bottom because he doesn't understand who he is. He doesn't understand who his power is. He doesn't understand what he represents and who he represents. Okay, and that's what leads me to this scenery right here in the movie Coming to America. Okay, because you got this actor named Eddie Murphy, and who plays Akeem, and he got his servant Semi. All right, and I might just say this also. This is why, as a so-called black man, it's important to understand your history and your heritage and understand where you come from. Okay, because no matter how much satanic agendas are being infiltrated by the devil himself, you stand firm, you stand with faith. Because why? Because you understand who your true power is. You understand who truly your God is. Okay, and once you have the truth of knowledge, once you have the ability to comprehend knowledge and truth, you're essentially out of spiritual bonds. Okay, and once again, these movies are designed to keep people in spiritual bonds. That way, Satan can stay at the very top, as he is currently in today's society. All right. So, with regards to this movie here, Coming to America, there's Sunni right here, which I'm gonna play and obviously talk about some of the occult slash subliminal messages that's being perpetuated in this movie. Okay, and the idea, once again, is to debase the so-called black man. Okay, debase him and make him adopt a mediocre mindset, and essentially steer him away from a ruling class mentality. All right, steer him away from having a ruling class mentality, steer him away from having certain masculine qualities such as leadership, authority, and royalty. Okay, because why? Because once you have those respective qualities, you are deemed a threat to society. And the reason why you're deemed a threat is because you are a threat to the rulership of Satan. Okay, because Satan wants control. So once again, the idea is to ensure that the so-called black man doesn't understand his heritage, he doesn't understand his history, he doesn't understand, or sorry, he they make sure that they install a mediocre mindset, and they install a mindset that the so-called black man adapts to the idea of having having the ability or the mindset of just accepting anything and everything that is essentially non-beneficial to him. Okay, they want the so-called black man to be in a position where he will happily accept anything, to the point where he will have no problem begging for scraps. Okay, and that's very prominent and very evident in today's society. Why? Because the so-called black man is constantly looking to every other race other than himself. Why? Because the so-called black man has no self-respect. He's got no love for himself, and therefore he has no love for his wife. He has no love for his children. He has no love for his community, because the so-called black man is destroyed. He has no idea who he is. Okay, so once the so-called black man understands his power and understands where he's come from, that way the so-called black community can come together as a community and thrive and flourish and go back to serving our power. Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Those of you that read the scriptures and those of you that are in the knowledge understand that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. All right. And so what I'm about to do is let the video play and just essentially break down some of the messages that are being perpetuated here in this scene. And once again, just letting you know that this is the mindset that a lot of so-called black people have adapted to in this modern society. Okay, which is a very mediocre society, a very mediocre mindset, a non-ruling class mentality mindset, and a mindset where they're prepared to be at the bottom and stay at the bottom and serve the Caucasians and every other race and nations of people out there, and instead of loving their own people. All right, so I'm going to play the video right here and right now, and let's see what unfolds. Oh, and just on the side note, before I play the video, another key message to understand also is this: Coming to America is the title of the movie, right? And America is essentially Babylon 2.0. Why? Because America has adopted the ideologies and the practices of ancient Babylon. So whatever took precedence in ancient Babylon is essentially what's taking precedence today. All right? Because America has complete authority and has complete influence and dominance over the whole world. Okay, so whatever ideologies and practices the whole world adopts to is because it's an offshoot of America, which again, America is an offshoot of ancient Babylon. So when you think coming to America, think coming to Babylon. And America / Babylon represents confusion, it represents chaos and disorder. Okay, it also represents obliteration. Why? Because the goal is to obliterate the so-called black man, Hispanic man, and Native American Indian man from a spiritual, psychological, and emotional perspective. Okay, so that's something that needs to be noted and understood. Okay, so it's very important that we pay very, very, very close attention to detail, because there are a lot of messages that's being perpetuated here. All right, so always important to pay close attention. But anyways, without further ado, I'm going to play the video and let's see what unfolds here.
You sure you guys want to go to Queens? A couple rich fellas like you should be in Manhattan. Stay at the Waldorf or the Palace.
The Palace sounds good. Take us there.
No, I want Queens.
So right off the bat, and let me just point something out also. Notice that these two here, Akeem and Sami, are dressed as rich men. They are dressed as princes, representing royalty, showing that they are men of power. All right, so they represent royalty, power, and essentially showing that they are a very wealthy bunch of individuals coming from a very rich background. Okay, because at this point in time, they understand their heritage, they understand where they've come from, they understand who they are, they understand their history. Okay, and slowly but surely, especially Eddie Murphy, who plays Akeem here in this movie, he starts to adopt a mediocre mindset to the point where he starts to debase himself and accepts himself as being the bottom of the barrel kind of guy, where he completely strips himself off his richness and will happily accept being poor. All right, so also the driver suggests, well, Akeem actually suggests he wants to be in a very poor environment whilst his servant Sammy suggesting otherwise. And as you can see, that he's obviously not very best pleased with Akeem's suggestion. Okay, so this is letting you know already the mindset that is being adopted here. All right, these two are very wealthy, they're very rich, and they're coming from a rich background, but everything's about to change.
We're not rich. We're ordinary African students.
So you hear that? We're not rich, we're ordinary African students, okay? But the reality is they are rich, okay? But this is letting you know that a confused individual that doesn't understand his worth, he doesn't understand his heritage, is willing to accept rubbish. He's willing to accept being bottom of the barrel.
Whatever you say, pal. What part of Queens you want?
Take us to the most common part.
That's easy. There's one thing Queens has got a lot of. It's common parts.
What does dumb fuck mean?
This shit enough for you?
Yes, this is perfect.
So notice that the driver asks Akeem, aka Eddie Murphy, is this shitty enough for you? As you can see, Akeem, aka Eddie Murphy, with a bright smile on his face, accepting this to be perfect enough for him. Alright? Knowing that they've just arrived in one of the poorest parts of America. Alright? So once again, coming to America, aka coming to Babylon, a place of confusion, a place of disorder and chaos. Alright?
Fascinating. Simi, look at this.
So once again, pay very close attention. Understand that they're in a very poor part of America, and you see quite a few homeless people. You see that the area around them is very trampy, and understand and look how ecstatic Akeem is. He's very ecstatic. He's very happy. He's very proud, almost as if he's won the lottery by the way he's acting. All right, and understand that this is the mindset that the majority of so-called black people have adopted to. Okay. And once again, this is why a ruling class mentality is so integral. All right. And this is why the so-called black man needs to study and show himself approved and be the dominant masculine figure that he has been designed to be. Because remember, the so-called black man is designed and created in the image of the Most High God, Yahweh. All right. So we need to go back to serving the Most High God to understand who we truly are. All right. Our ignorance is what led us to the position that we're in, and it's important that we return back to our heritage by taking heed to the scriptures and digesting it and doing so accordingly, doing what we are commanded to do and serve our power. All right. So understand once again the message, the subconscious and subliminal message that this movie is putting out there. The goal is to subjugate and spiritually obliterate the so-called black man. All right. The goal is to spiritually obliterate the so-called black man. Couldn't make that clear enough, okay? Because again, they come in dressed as rich men. They're dressed as princes, all right? Showing that they are royalty and true heritage, okay? But Akeem is so willing to give that up.
America is great indeed. Imagine a country so free, one can throw glass on the streets.
So America apparently is free and is a great country, right? But when you look at the history of America, understand that the Caucasians had got a foothold in America by completely committing genocide on Native American Indians. All right, and throughout history, they've enslaved and completely physically and spiritually and psychologically and emotionally abused and obliterated so-called black people. Okay, they've tortured, they've raped them, they've committed a whole heap of genocide on them. Okay, so when you think of the phrase "Make America Great Again," understand that the goal is to establish white supremacy. Okay, so read in between the lines, read and understand the message that's being perpetuated.
Goddamn mind. You crazy, man. You crazy. I am not crazy. Oh,
Listen.
Mike Tyson boy can't even fight. He can't
Real
fight.
Americans.
Pound for pound. Sugar Ray Rock wants to be called. I'm gonna call him Clay. It's Clay.
Okay, now what the fuck do you want?
We desire a room.
But you better not be wasting my time. You got money.
So notice that Semi shows him the money, just demonstrating how rich that they are and how much money they've got. And Akeem at the beginning was suggesting that they are very poor. Why is that? Because that's the mindset he's willing to adopt to. He wants to adopt to the mindset of being broke and being poor and being at the bottom, all right, and being in a subservient position.
Come on in, gentlemen.
Yo, man, get the big bag here. Right? Hey. Come, mama. Everything is come here, Lucia.
Excuse me if I was brusque, but sometimes we get boo-boos in here without a dollar to their name. But obviously you gentlemen came in on another boat.
We seek meager accommodations.
Excuse me?
We require a room that is very poor.
Hey, did you catch that? We require a room that is very poor. Okay? Willfully taking a room that's very poor. Bearing in mind they're coming from a rich background. Even the other person, the third man, understood that they were very rich and that they come from a whole, they quote unquote come from a different boat, meaning they come from a whole different land. Okay? Because he's seen that he's recognizing the distinction between rich and poor. Okay? He can see that they're rich, but Akeem, aka Eddie Murphy, wants to consider himself to be someone that is poor.
Hey, Stu, your rent's due, motherfucker! And don't be pulling that falling down the stairs shit on me, you hear? Are you conscious? Shoot, every month the same damn thing. Tell you the truth. All right, here we are. There's only one bathroom on this floor, so you're gonna have to share it. A little bit of an insect problem, but you boys from Africa, you're used to that. And another thing, don't use the elevator, it's a death trap. Now, this is the place that I was telling you about. It's real fucked up. Got just one window facing a brick wall. Used to rent it to a blind man. Damn shame what they did to that dog.
We will take the room. Yes.
And see that? Look at the state of the room, and it's something that he's willing to accept. And this is what they're trying to normalize for the so-called black man. All right?
I want to go deeper and skip small talk. I'm pure. You don't wait. Here, we skip to the good part.
Here's the thing about women and flirting that every man needs to know, especially you.
Just on a side note, apologies for the adverts.
Life, real life, a thing that we have been denied for far too long. Good morning, my neighbors! And fuck you! Yes! Yes! Fuck you too!
Now notice that all the people around are wearing the clothes that were stolen from them. Alright, these richly garments that, as you can see here on screen, that the people in America, the homeless people, that are wearing. Alright, so something that Akeem perceived to be nothing of value, everyone else sees that as value. Okay, and understand that that's typically the mindset of the so-called black man. Alright, other races of people understand how valuable that the so-called black man is, and everyone wants to be the so-called black man other than the so-called black man himself, because these other races, these other nations of people understand who the so-called black man is, and they understand who his power is.
I'm beginning to suspect that these are the people that have stolen our luggage.
Yo, you want to buy some toothbrushes, man? This is some real fly personal hygiene equipment I got here, man. And I got a hell of a hair dryer over here, too. Check it out.
Thief! Stop! Thief! Come back, thief! Simi, let him go. But those things belong to us. Yeah, we're well rid of those material things. Let them wear our princely robes.
So understand this also, understand the message here. So Sammy, understand that those were true valuables. They were something that belonged to them, and he was willing to chase after the individual in question, obviously retrieve his belongings. But notice that Akeem just says, nah, let them have it, let them go, let them wear our priestly robes. Alright, and understand that that's what the so-called black man is doing with regards to his history. He's letting history being rewritten, and he's accepting history that's completely fabricated, and he has no problem subscribing to the fabricated history. Okay, he has no problem every other race or nation taking the heritage of the so-called black man. Okay, as like I said previously, everyone wants to take on the heritage of the so-called black man and be the so-called black man other than the so-called black man himself. Okay, that's what Akeem here is essentially demonstrating. He's basically saying to the nations, yeah, just take whatever you want, take our heritage, take our history, take our culture, take whatever. Be the people of the book, be the people of the Bible,